Today we are talking to a fan favorite. Join us today on Fostering the Future.
Welcome to the Fostering the Future podcast, a show about all things child welfare, dependency, adoption, and foster care. Here are your hosts, veterans in the world of child welfare, Jack and Kat.
We believe that every human has incredible and equal value regardless of what side of the courtroom we sit on. We hope that everyone feels welcome and accepted here on Fostering the Future.
Make sure you follow us on Facebook or Instagram as Fostering the Future Podcast, or check us out on our website at fosteringthefuturepodcast.org. This is Jack, and today we have a return guest in the studio. We have Brenna from episode 33. Welcome back, Brenna.
Hello. So nice to see you again.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is you've had some changes in your house since we last talked in the studio, haven't you?
I have had big changes.
And your life is probably looking a bit differently now?
Completely different. My husband and I are foster parents, and we took our first placement on December 29th. It was supposed to be short term, and now here we are 5 weeks later, and it is no longer short term. We have a 5-year-old little boy, and we are co-parenting with another foster home who has the other 3 siblings.
Does the other foster family know about your background in child welfare?
Yes, we actually, the first time she went to drop off some of the kids for a sibling visit, we sat down and got to know each other. She's been doing this for 7 years now as fostering, has 8 kids in her home right now. We both talked about our experience, made sure we were on the same page with our credentials, and it's been really well working with her. She's awesome.
I feel like if I had one of my kids' siblings in another home and I found out their foster parent had a background like you did, I would be so excited because, you know, when you're working with another foster family, the knowledge and experience that you put together to kind of help advocate for these kids is awesome.
Yeah, we've been really good to pair together because she's been in the Hillsborough County system for quite some time. So she's familiar with the case managers here and the gals. And then I'm really familiar with how to find resources and things like that. So we're getting our 5-year-old into T-ball and getting it covered through the Sunshine Care Grant. Do you know what that is?
Yes, I do. Actually, and I was going to throw out 2 other options since we're mentioning it. And a lot of our listeners are in the state of Florida. In addition to the Sunshine Care Grant, which is it $150?
$150 towards anything health related.
Right. And that comes from Sunshine Health Insurance if your kid is assigned to them. And it's something that you can apply for through the case manager. In addition to that, there's 2 other resources that anybody who wants to sign their kids up for Little League anywhere in Florida, actually, I think anywhere, there's a website. If you search for T-Mobile call-up grant, T-Mobile is paying fees for any child who wants to play baseball or softball or T-ball. There's a couple guidelines, but they certainly are met by kids in foster care. It's a really quick form you fill out with your information and the child's information. And if they have Medicaid, you can upload a copy of their Medicaid card and that will be sufficient for coverage. Or if they're on school lunch, reduced or free school lunch, that is enough. Also, if they're on WIC, there's all these different ways that you can apply and be approved. And I have used that for my foster kids and my adopted kids from foster care for the past 2 years.
Nice.
And even one of my kids, the fees went up to almost $100 and they're covering the whole thing, even the processing fees. So that's a great resource for baseball, T-ball, softball.
Yeah, definitely.
And unlike the Sunshine Care Grant, those will pay in advance.
Nice.
So you don't even have to pay for it. They email you and they show you how to make the payment through them. And then the third thing is if you're in the state of Florida, the Caterpillars to Butterflies Charitable Foundation will pay for sports, dance, anything like that. So you can just go to their website and give them a call, and that's caterflies.org. Those are 3 awesome resources.
Yes.
If you are a foster parent or a case manager or gal, any way you're related to a foster kid and there's something that they want to do, there are resources out there that will provide financially for that. Brenna.
Yes.
You're here today to talk about something I'm very excited about. I'm so excited about this. And I know like your whole life has been kind of focused towards this for a while. And I know you're excited about this. So you're here to talk to us about yoga and breath work and the ways that those can be used to support kids in foster care. So first of all, let me ask you, how did you get into this and what exactly is it that you're doing?
It's really funny when I think about like the points, like the milestones in my life that led me to this point. Because when I was in college going to school for social work and psychology, I said I never wanted to get into the child welfare system because, as we all know from episode 33, I was a child in the child welfare system. So I wanted to stay away from it. It took it being the only option for a career when I moved down to Florida. And I was like, I'll just do it for a little bit. I'll find something else and I'll move on. And then here I am now where it's literally the only thing I do with my life and my
personal life, professional life, every life.
All of the lifestyles is around child welfare. So everyone knows kind of my history of my childhood. Not everyone. Listen to episode 33 and you'll get
you'll figure it out.
You'll get my childhood history that kind of led me to kind of that passion. From there, I got a degree in psychology and social work. I knew I kind of wanted to work with kids or teens or young adults. Didn't really know what path back then. I started working in criminal rehabilitation to start out with Judge Pratt. She just actually had a TED Talk if anyone wants to look it up. She's awesome. Drop her name there.
I'm intrigued.
About working with people in terms of services and intervention measures versus just jail time, things like that. So kind of what we do when we work with our bio parents.
So we need to get her on the podcast.
Oh my gosh,
next.
yes, we should get Judge Pratt on here. So that was kind of my first touch of like working with people who were in bad situations, but kind of I started seeing that generational incarceration, generational drug abuse, generational trauma. And that was kind of my first exposure to that. I moved over to child welfare from there as a case manager. And on top of working the normal case manager, child welfare case manager cases, I also had the drug court case programs for a while, which gave you a whole different aspect of drug abuse, what it entails, how generational it is, how you can, your children will mimic the behaviors of the bio parent, all of that fun substance abuse and addiction, mental health trauma. And then from there, I went into licensing and started working with foster homes and saw just how much trauma came into it wasn't only the bio family, but it's the foster families that also feel the trauma of the children and also experience it firsthand. And none of these parties, the bio families, the foster families, the children, the gals, the social workers, no one's talking about this population. No one's talking about the trauma that all of us are having in this system. No one's talking, everyone's talking about how the system's screwed up, but
everybody's favorite topic.
But no one's addressing our emotions, our psyche, how we are doing. Not even the system, but the people in the system. We need to be our best selves, and the kids need to be able to have resources to become their best selves as they become adults. And I've just kind of seen a void of services being provided for those issues. For the trauma of the children, for the trauma of the bio parents, for the trauma of the foster parents, the case managers, the gals. No one's addressing how to process that and continue functioning while experiencing more trauma, because the trauma's not going to go away. And the reason I recognized this was because I started working with a nonprofit called Yoga for First Responders. And we teach first responders and military personnel the same thing when I worked for that nonprofit. We teach that you can't make the stress go away. You can't make the trauma go away, but you can learn how to process it and help it be more prepared and proactive next time you experience trauma. That's kind of what inspired me to start bringing yoga and breathwork to the child welfare system, because I don't see anyone else doing it. I've seen how beneficial it has been for the first responders and military personnel that I've worked with. I've literally traveled the country with with the nonprofit Yoga for First Responders, teaching yoga to them that's based on specific needs that they have. So there should be something for everyone in our population for the specific needs we have, because a lot of it has to do with lack of regulation, whether it's the bio parents, the foster parents, the case managers, the burnout, whatever it is, we're not regulating and we're not processing, and we just keep going.
Because like we're all in this reactive instead of proactive mode, because everything is urgent and everything is so much and so big, and you don't have time to like go back and stop and think about what's going on. So that's definitely something that we could all do better.
And if you think about that environment, we're raising a child in that environment.
Right.
So we're all reactive and, oh my God, freaking out and shaking and panicking.
Yeah.
And then that's what the child is absorbing.
Right. And that's like their brain development is so much about like what their environment is, right?
Yes, exactly. So one thing that is really cool about breath work and yoga is that it can actually change your brain. Like you can actually change the structures of your brain and how your brain functions.
Wow.
And you can do it yourself. It's called neuroplasticity. Okay. And there's a whole bunch of science behind it. We can do a whole episode just on the science if anyone wants to listen to it one day. But through breath work, you can hack your autonomic nervous system, or your system that runs automatically. So like your heartbeat, your breathing, things like that.
Should we be hacking our heartbeat?
No, but that's the thing. So that's a good question. So
I wouldn't want just anybody hacking my heartbeat.
So when you hack your autonomic nervous system, you're hacking your breath work. The only other thing that your autonomic nervous system does that you can hack is blinking. So you'll blink without thinking about it, but you can also blink on command. But it would be really silly for us to sit here and try to blink to help us become mindful. Like that would just, we'd all look really strange and it wouldn't, and we'd all be laughing and it wouldn't help. So that's why we do breath work.
Okay.
So when you breathe, specifically nasal breathing through your nose, in and out through your nose. Most people will breathe in through their nose and breathe out through their mouth. Breathing in and out through the nose helps you access your autonomic nervous system, and more importantly, helps you regulate between your parasympathetic nervous system and your sympathetic nervous system.
Okay, what's the difference between your parasympathetic, those two words?
So your parasympathetic nervous system is your, I don't want to say normal, but it's your rest and digest. So like when we're just sitting here and hanging out, your nervous system's doing its thing. It's keeping your immunity levels up. It's keeping your metabolism going, making sure your hair's growing, all of the things. Your sympathetic nervous system is, I think of it for people to remember as like your body's being sympathetic towards your situation you're in. So that's the fight, fright, or freeze. You see a bear and you get your adrenaline rushed and you're running away from the bear, or you get a car accident and now your arms are shaking on the steering wheel because you have all this adrenaline pumping through you.
So the sympathetic nervous system is the thing that gets dysregulated, or do both of them?
The dysregulation comes from being stuck in that sympathetic nervous system. Okay. Because what happens is, I see this a lot with traumatized children, is you have to regulate the system and go back to that parasympathetic state, but it takes time to regulate. So it can take 24 to 48 hours in a white room with no noise and no sound to regulate from your sympathetic nervous system to your parasympathetic nervous system. And no one has a white room or 24 to 48 hours to sit that long.
I barely have an hour to sit.
Exactly. Other mammals have the ability to shake out the stress or the trauma, and that's how they regulate. So one of the examples...
What animals do that?
So one of the examples I learned through my yoga for first responder training was, so there's a gazelle will do it. So like say there's a cheetah chasing the gazelle in the, I don't know, wherever they live, Amazon, I'm not sure.
The Serengeti?
Serengeti,
Let's go with that.
So the cheetah doesn't get it. It gives up. It runs away. The gazelle survived. It's behind a rock hiding. You'll see the gazelle literally, and they can't see this on the podcast, but they'll shake and go...
Brenna is now shaking her arms and her head and making horsey noises.
So, and that's how they process the stress and the trauma, and that sympathetic nervous system and the adrenaline and the cortisol and all of those feelings out of their body so that they can reset and go about their day.
Wow.
But humans have this thing called a mind or a self-conscious.
Wait, but if we did that, would we be okay?
It would work. So there's literally people who teach it to humans to shake and make noises.
So when I'm stressed, I'm going to shake my arms.
That's why people like dancing.
And breathe like a horse?
That's why people like dancing, because it makes them feel better.
Okay.
Moving, shaking, singing. Yoga is another mindful tool. Because the human body has developed a mind, we go, oh, we can't look like that. Oh, we can't. That's embarrassing. We're shaking.
I mean, yeah.
Look at that random person shaking in the mall. Why is she doing that? Why is she making those weird horse noises with her lips? And so we don't do that. And so dad comes home and gets in a domestic dispute with mom. You go into the sympathetic nervous state. it goes up. Think of like a temperature rising. So it slowly has to come down. Then drug dealer comes over, mom gets drugs, she gets high. So it goes back up. It has to slowly come back down. Cops come, goes back up. It never has the chance to go from 10 back down to 0 because it keeps getting pushed up there. So there's no time for regulation. So then the body just gets stuck in that fight, flight, or freeze response. And then we have no tool to get it out. And then that's why there's hikes in cortisol and adrenaline. And then we have all these kids getting diagnoses of ADD and ADHD and OCD and ODD and
ASD and
I'm just going to keep, all of these.
All of the Ds.
And I'm not going to say it's just because some people do have actual diagnoses.
Yeah.
But it's trauma. The first and foremost thing that should be being addressed is the trauma and how their body is processing it, because they can process it physically where they have stomach pains and stomach problems and digestion issues, which people don't think about with the infants. Think of how all the infants, have you ever had one infant who didn't have some type of digestional
they
issue?
all have like the worst GI situations.
So it's not that they're not processing the trauma or have issues.
Just coming out in their crap. Literally.
It can come out in behaviors. It can come out in lack of behaviors. I've been experiencing that with my 5-year-old. The moment anything happens that's not happy, he freezes immediately. And it's so different than what I see with a lot of children. You see them kick and scream and act out. He freezes and looks like he's about to bawl his eyes out because you just like told him that you were taking everything away from him every single time.
Yeah.
So that's how the body responds. He spilled the juice and his body went to someone getting hurt and like crying.
Yeah.
That's an example of that trauma response and getting stuck there. There has been multitudes of studies showing how yoga, breathwork, and mindfulness techniques can be used to help regulate back to the parasympathetic nervous system so that you're only using the sympathetic nervous system when you're actually supposed to, when there's actually an emergency or you're actually in danger.
So that's supposed to actually be at 0 most of the time, except for when there's an actual emergency going on.
Yes.
And when we're stuck in this trauma phase, being triggered by trauma, we're stuck in the sympathetic nervous system. Mm-hmm. And how does that affect the parasympathetic nervous system when you're stuck over here all the time?
So the parasympathetic nervous system, like I said, that has to do with your digestion. It has to do with your immunity system. Okay. It has to do with your hair and nails and skin growing. It has to do with everything that's not going to save your life. Right. So anything that your body does that isn't going to save your life, you're just there to live, that's your parasympathetic nervous system. So think about your body not helping your immunity be strong. Your body not helping your metabolism.
Which is why these kids get sick, and they're always sick when they come into care.
So your body's not having a good digestion, not good metabolism. Your kidneys aren't going to run a good... Anything that has to do with that type of, like I said, not emergency type system is going to be affected. Yeah. For boys, it lowers the testosterone. I mean, it lowers testosterone for everyone, but you'll see it more so in the male population. So there's a whole slew of issues, sleeping problems. Because the cortisol is so high, when you get older, you can get heart issues, things of that nature. I'm working with a 19-year-old who aged out of foster care, who has a medical diagnosis that affects her heart in terms of if she stands up, her heart rate goes up 30 beats per minute.
Just from standing up?
Just from standing up or sitting down. But that stress was from her. Like that didn't just happen. She had been traumatized so much. Her heart has been racing. So, just think about what her heart has been through.
Yeah.
It shows itself in many ways. So what we do was through breath work, inhalation and exhalation through the nose, you can access the autonomic nervous system and you can help it regulate between the two. With your inhalations, you activate the sympathetic nervous system, and with the exhalations, you activate the parasympathetic nervous system, which is why if anyone's ever heard anything about breath work, they always tell you to make your exhalations longer than your inhalations.
Okay.
So you inhale for 3, exhale for 5, because you're using that parasympathetic nervous system to help it have a longer time in your body. There's ways to teach this to different populations within the child welfare system. First and foremost, I'm trying to bring it to the children because I think that for so many reasons, they need this. One, because like you said, they're in this chaotic, hectic, intense environment all the time, and they should be able to have a way to regulate and be taught a way to regulate. 2, when I've watched a multitude of presentations with my history of yoga for first responders, we always say to the first responders, like, imagine if you were taught this when you were a child, like when you were taught brushing your teeth. Like, imagine the tools you would have now.
Something you mentioned that we were actually just talking about in another episode about the whole generational thing. You know how we talk all the time on this podcast about what can we do to have less kids come into foster care, right? We ask everybody who comes in that. One of the things that we were talking about is consider the generational cycle of foster care. We've got these kids in the system right now. Why aren't we doing more to make sure that they're not coming back, right? As parents. So if we're teaching them the breath work now, when they get older and they're repeating the mistakes of their parents, they will have the resiliency and the tools to maybe work through the trauma so that the trauma isn't driving their decisions in their life.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I think it's so crucial that we teach it to all kids. But the reason I'm so drawn to the child welfare system is because like these kids are literally, have you ever seen it? Just there's a video where like all these kids hold their hands and they'll say like, if you had this, step forward. Like if you had two parents in your home, step forward. If you had two parents with jobs, step forward. And it shows these kids getting left behind because they don't have those things.
Right.
And so when I think of that video, I always think of our kids in the child welfare system. Like they don't have a running start. Like they're left behind. So if we can teach them this tool that's life changing, imagine the impact it will have on them.
Right.
Not only in the now when they're children, but also when they become adults. And that's also why I want to teach it to the bio parents too, though, because no one taught them how to regulate. They're part of this generational cycle. They're a victim of the cycle. Right. It just like everyone likes to look at them as the bad guy, but they're really just a victim of the cycle themselves.
They're just the kids that we had 10 years ago.
Yeah, exactly.
Or 5 years ago.
Yeah, depending on some of the teenagers. But so that's why I want to bring it to all of the populations.
Right.
When I say bring yoga to the populations, I don't mean like, so mostly when people think of yoga, they think of a white girl, skinny, in like these fancy pink yoga pants. Yoga pants, exactly.
Okay.
With some bedazzled yoga bag and like a macchiato in her hands. Yeah. Exactly. And that's what you think of when you think yoga. Yoga is actually 5,000 years old. I always kind of tie it to martial arts so people can understand the lineage of it. Yeah. It was used to train warriors for battle, and women used to not be able to even do it when they first created it. So this whole like feminine, soft, easy, kind, like it's that's not the actual image, and it's kind of just become westernized. So it's become Americanized and it's become a brand. So that's not what I'm bringing. I'm bringing the actual training that is used to help someone grow both mind and body, because everyone's either focused on, oh, I need to go to a mental health therapist, my mind hurts, or oh, I need to go to the gym, I'm overweight and I have diabetes. But no one's thinking, why don't I work on both at once? And that's the best way to do it. Not because, killing two birds with one stone. I have a friend who said once, letting two birds free with one key, because it wasn't violent. And I liked it. I like that better, right? Yeah. So it's letting two birds free with one key, but it's also optimal function of the mind and body, because your mind doesn't work on its own. Like you don't just sit on a chair and mind all day. You have to use your body. You can't just sit there. You have to eat. You have to move. You have to use your hands. You have to do things. Yeah. And you also can't just be body, because then your body wouldn't move because you didn't have a mind. Right. So why are we training them separately? Yeah.
I think that like both of them together are the answer for pretty much anything health wise.
So the biggest thing is yoga it's not a religion. A lot of people think that. Yeah. It's a mindfulness practice.
Right. I think it's been used in religion.
Yes.
So people assume like a lot of people who I know that are Christians are like, I'm not going to do yoga because that's like against God, or you're idolizing something else.
You can do yoga and pray to whatever God you have or don't have. I mean, it's
I think what we have to do is back it up to what it is at its core, which isn't praying to this God or praying to that God, but
it's a tool to be healthy.
Yeah.
That's all it is. It's a tool to be healthy. It's the most practical tool in some situations.
Because you don't need stuff, right?
No, you literally just need your body. You don't even need limbs. Like this has been taught to veterans who are like quadriplegics. Like you literally just need to sit still and breathe. The yoga, I'm not saying, when I'm working with the families, I'm not saying namaste or telling you some God, Buddhist story. Right. None of that. I'm not using what people hear a lot, like the Sanskrit words, where I'm like savasana or skandasana. Like I'm not, we're just going to call it poses that the kids can understand. Right. Things like, camel, cat, cow, animals. They love animals.
I think there's this like nexus between yoga and martial arts and also occupational therapy. therapy because the stretches that my son does in his occupational therapy, I look at them and I'm like, oh, that's this from yoga. Oh, that's this from Tai Chi. Like they're all so similar. And I think they all are focusing on helping the same systems in our body, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there was always the, Eastern philosophy before there was the Western science. So with the occupational therapy, I would definitely say that came from the yoga, the martial arts, the Tai Chi. I had the Elise, by the way, and it was amazing. Just have to put that out there because we talked about it last time I was here.
I'm so glad you enjoyed Elise.
So with the yoga, I'm taking all of the Americanized stuff out, all of the namaste, any of the things that may make people feel uncomfortable because it kind of associates with some type of religious belief. I'm just using the mind and body practice, and that's what I'm bringing. So only like what the actual important part of the practice is, that's what I'm teaching. I know with some people, like it sounds silly, like, oh, yoga for like a trauma treatment for children. That's kind of, a bold statement, but there's actually a lot of studies out there that have been using this, not only with the children, but also there's studies out there recommending it for the social workers and the caregivers. And, like I said, the bio parents before, and they're using it with, I read a study from Boston University that referenced doing a 8-week practice with the children, orphan children who survived in Haiti when all of that happened and with the earthquake. So there was 7-year-olds and up, and they said there was about like 40 children, and they did an 8-week practice with them. They said after the 8-week practice of using breathing techniques, postures, meditations, and being consistent with the practice, which is very important, there was positive results seen in all trauma-related symptoms for them for that 8-week program. So there's a bunch of studies out there. There's another one from Georgetown Law Center on poverty and equality, and it was talking about the benefits for at-risk youth within the juvenile centers, which we have a lot of teens that go out of the juvenile centers for the child welfare system. It works specifically with females, but the benefits of the yoga showed better coping skills, increase in emotional regulation, increase in neurological and physical health outcomes, healthier parenting practices for those who are teen moms. Yeah. Which that's insane. Like they're taking the techniques. Well, it's not insane. I believe it, but some people, it's insane to other people that, immediately with, a 12-week program, and then they're taking what they used and using it with their own children, as well as it helps them specifically find a better sense of self-esteem, self-respect, and just overall general health and well-being. It also helps them use breathing to avoid aggressive responses and provocative situations, whether it's from peers or a case manager.
That's
or whomever
huge, because most of these kids, like the biggest thing is that the slightest thing can trigger them, especially in classrooms where you're getting a call every day. Oh, so-and-so looked at him funny, so he like threw a book at him. That's like a very common thing is the overreaction because of the trauma response. We're saying that the breathwork and yoga studies have shown is going to decrease that. That's incredible.
It's absolutely insane how easy it is to implement as well, which is why I want to share it with the foster parents, because even just the 5 weeks of me having my 5-year-old, there was a time where he was getting really frustrated trying to buckle a seatbelt. And he started freaking out. And I was like, watch mommy. And I closed my mouth and I breathed through my nose and I breathed out my nose. And then he did it. And then he took a second and then he buckled his seatbelt.
Oh, gosh.
That could have been a complete meltdown for a 5-year-old.
100%.
So I didn't even tell him like, hey, we're going to do breathing. Like, no, you don't have to explain to them the technique you're using. It can you don't tell them, hey, we're using positive parenting when you positively parent them. You just use it.
And one of the cool things is that like you can even do it with babies and they replicate it because they just hear you breathing. They always say breathe in through your nose and breathe out through your mouth. And you're saying use the nose for both. So why are we using the nose for both? And what is the benefit of that?
So you can breathe through your mouth. I'm not saying don't breathe through your mouth. There are breath techniques out there that tell you to breathe through your mouth. There's breath techniques out there that tell you to only breathe through your mouth. For the purpose of calming and regulating and kind of bringing to a nice regulation or baseline, breathing in through the nose and out through the nose.
Because that's what we want to do.
Yes.
Like the calming is what we're looking for, man.
Yes, because the mouth can be activating. Because if you think of someone who's stressed out or tired or exhausted or in a traumatic experience and they're breathing, you think of someone, and I'll explain it after I do it, but I'm going to make the noise first where they go, So their mouth's open, they're breathing in and out quickly, their shoulders are rising up and down, their neck's tensed, and, they're breathing in through their chest and out through their chest. They're not using their lower belly at all or anything like that. And so when you breathe through your mouth and you mimic that, it tells your brain activated.
Oh.
So you can't use a breath technique that your body associates with stress.
Stress for when you're trying to calm.
Yes.
That totally makes sense.
Yes. There are calming techniques where like you purse your lips, like you're going to like give someone a kiss and like blow.
Yeah.
Or I actually used this with my foster son today when we were at the doctor's because he had to pee in a cup and he couldn't pee in a cup. So if you inhale through your nose and then blow out your lips like you're blowing on a cup of soup or something hot, it actually helps you go to the bathroom.
Oh, good to know.
Yes. So it's really good for kids.
Yeah.
But it's also, like, you can take it and use it in your bathroom. Like, whatever.
When I gotta go, and I can.
So he was having trouble peeing because I was holding a cup and he was looking at me and we're awkward because he's 5 and like he's, it's mommy's holding a cup for him to go potty in. So I had him do it. I put my hand out. I said, pretend this is, what did I say? I said, pretend this is hot food. And I said, and he did it and he mimicked it. And there's another one because you were saying with the babies, they sync with you.
Yeah.
It's not just babies. It's anyone. Like you can lay on your significant other's chest and your breathing will sync with them. Mm-hmm. So it's a very intimate thing, but it's also very calming because your body releases this thing called oxytocin.
Yes. The good stuff.
The good stuff. Oxytocin, you feel it when you give a hug, when you give a kiss. Birthing a child, your body releases a crap load of it. That's
when
why
you
people
smell your baby's head, right?
Yeah, that's why people go back and have second kids because of the oxytocin. Not because it is. Your body's drugging you to make you want more because you're like, oh my God, I love this. The children, whatever age they are, teenagers, 8-year-olds, babies, they can sync up with you. And something as simple as like they're crying and you hug them and you just start breathing deeply. You don't tell them you're doing it, but I've done it with my 5-year-old foster son. I've also done it with his sister who's in the other home because she was sleeping over and she started crying because she bit one of the other kids. No. she was the one who did the thing, but she was anyway, she was bawling her eyes out. And instead of addressing that she bit someone first and yelling at her, I said, oh, you look like you're sad because you're crying. I said, when I'm sad, I want a hug. Do you want a hug? Aww. And she said, yes. So she hugged me.
How old is she?
6.
No.
And so I started breathing deeply through my nose, in and out through my nose. And by the second breath, she was doing it with me and had stopped crying. Literally 2 breaths. That's all it took to prevent a temper tantrum from a 6-year-old who just got in trouble for biting her brother. 2 breaths. That's all it took. Like, it's not hard to implement these practices. They're just not taught to anyone.
As you're speaking, I'm thinking of like 8 million different things that I should be responding with in that way instead of in a different way.
And I'm not saying like, because we're parents and we get frustrated because kids can be frustrating. Yeah. And those feelings are valid. We are valid in our feelings of aggravation and like, oh my God, just do the thing. That is totally valid to feel. Yeah. But the actions is, okay, this is a traumatized child in a foster home. They need the most gentle, positive parenting they can get in these situations because of what they've been through. Yeah. So how can I come at this in a way that's going to regulate them so that we can calm the situation down first and then address the situation? Because we're all trying to address these heightened kids.
And when you're in that state of trauma, you don't hear, you don't process, you don't think logically. So trying to like teach them something in that moment is not going to work. The more effective way to teach is to wait until they're in a place where they can hear it.
Yes, exactly. So you can help them regulate, whether it's through hugging them and breathing with them, whether it's a couple times with my 5-year-old foster son, he has one he thinks is really funny. If you think of the 3 monkeys, like the hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil. So we do the speak no evil. So he'll cover his mouth. I'm covering my mouth. You just can't see it because it's a podcast. And then I have him breathe through his nose. And that's how I taught him how to breathe through his nose. We made it like a
covering the mouth?
Yeah, we made it a fun game. So we'd be like, see no evil, cover your ears. Hear no evil, cover your ears. Speak no evil, cover your mouth. And then I have him do like 5 breaths through his nose. And that's how I taught him to breathe through his nose. It's, you make it into it's a 5-year-old. Yeah. You can teach it to a 5-year-old. It's the possibilities are endless. It can be taught to anyone. And it's so needed in this high stress, high traumatized environment. So that's what I want to bring it to all the populations and teach the foster parents how to bring it to their kids and how to apply it in their own life and regulate their own life, even when it's the things that don't have to do with the children. All of this breathwork talk, and we didn't even get into any of the physical benefits of yoga. Like, we just talked about breathing and how awesome breathing is. Yeah. Set aside like all of the other benefits that yoga has through the physical movement and building resiliency of the mind. So if you help this population, meaning all of the parties, use this practice, use the breath work, use the yoga, the benefits are in optimal functioning of their mind and body. So now think of all of the parties that we're working with, the foster parents. Think of the foster parents performing at optimal function, like all of the foster parents.
I mean, because we're probably all performing at negative.
Yes, burnout.
Negative, maximum.
We are all performing at burnout.
Malfunction, right? After the past couple of years, especially, but anybody who's been doing this for an amount of time, like we are all probably, hanging on by our teeth.
Yeah, and I've had a conversation with my support system about the importance of healthy boundaries as a foster parent, which I've experienced multiple times in the past 5 weeks that I've been one, is people call you all the time for you to break your boundaries.
Yes.
As a foster parent.
Yes.
Placement, case manager, licensing specialist, they're calling you and asking you to do things.
And especially new foster parents feel like, oh, I got to do everything. The minute they say it, I can never say no. I have to do what I'm told because they're scared of, because you have to do all these things to get licensed and you just have to follow all the directions. And then you're licensed and you feel like you have to, it's not that you need to like break rules or do anything wrong, but for goodness sake, you're allowed to say, I can't do this on this day. I'm not available at that time. I'm aware that I'm allowed to say no. If I'm able to help, I will. Look, dude, I'll jump through the moon for you if it'll help these kids. Mm-hmm. But also am not willing to sacrifice my family's well-being to make myself a crazy lunatic by running around constantly and doing all the things they want me to do because they're shorthanded. Yeah. So you have to say no. You have to put your boundaries up.
And that was something I taught a lot when I taught PPT as a licensing specialist. I'm like, you need to have your boundaries written down, whatever they are, whether we're talking about, no visits on Sunday because it's family day or whatever your deal breakers are with taking placements, whatever your boundaries are as a household. Yeah. Like you have to write them down and look at them and stick to them. Imagine we give the breathing techniques and the yoga techniques to the foster parents. Now they're performing optimally. Yes. One of my first thoughts since I've become a foster mom is I have awareness of my boundaries because I take a second, I breathe, and I know myself. I have a sense of self.
Instead of just immediately responding.
And now imagine all of the foster parents who didn't listen to their boundary, took a placement they originally was against their boundary, but they did anyway, and then disrupted. Yeah. Imagine how much of that could be prevented. Right. All of that is unnecessary time and money and effort from all parties when we have those disruptions. Yeah. And if you just take a moment and be like, okay, is this against my boundary? Is this a boundary that I said, my family can't handle 4. Mm-hmm. We can only handle 3 or, whatever that may be. You know yourself. You said you wouldn't be able to take some child with XYZ issue and you take them in because it's the brother
this particular
or whatever,
age
and you don't feel comfortable with it. And now you're trying to do something to help someone else, but now you're self-sacrificing. And then the disruption happens or burnout or someone gets tremendously ill because when people get burnout, they can get sick. Yeah. I've had that happen to foster moms where they got deathly ill and they were overstressed. Imagine that not happening. Now take it to the case managers and the licensing specialists. Imagine them performing optimally. Imagine the gals performing optimally, the attorneys. Now taking it to the bio parents, giving them a second to realize who they actually are. Because we're not doing that. We're giving them a list of tasks. We talked about this on episode 33. There's so many different types of therapy services out there to help someone. Right. And not all of them are the right fit for everyone. So we can't just prescribe CBT therapy to all of our bio parents. Right. It doesn't work with everyone. It didn't work with me. Different routes of therapy worked for me.
I know that everybody needs a different therapy, but I think we could all learn breathing. Yes. I think that's something that, across the board.
When you're working with someone, it has to be, and I'm not saying it has to be me, I'm just saying it has to be someone who's trauma-informed to the child welfare specific population.
Right. So we can't just go get any yoga teacher and think that that's going to solve all of our trauma processing problems.
Yeah, I always say Sally Sue Yoga. I don't know if it's just the fake name that I make up. I'm like,
there's a Sally Sue Yoga out there dying.
This poor Sally Sue Yoga has never had a customer because I tell everyone not to go to her. I always say, you can't just go to Sally Sue Yoga up the road because Sally Sue Yoga doesn't understand the child welfare system, doesn't understand the dynamics of a caregiver relationship to a child in care, doesn't understand the bio parents and what they've been through. Don't understand the case manager's hardships and what they're going through. So you need someone who understands the system, but then also can apply it on the yoga mat as an example of don't walk up behind, I'm just going to say abuse victims. You're not going to walk up behind them and hold, touch their back to tell them something.
And that's, when you said that to me a time ago, that was something that really clicked in my head. And that, I think that more than anything in discussing how this needs to be handled, because like I've taken yoga classes. I took them when I was a kid. I've taken them as an adult. They almost always put their hands on you. You know, they're helping you put your body in the right place. And most of the time, that's the easiest way to do it is like, here, move your back this way or put this arm over here. But knowing how some of my foster kids have felt, like sometimes even shoulder rubbing them, like they freak out.
Yeah.
So,
well, and one of the things you just said is like easy. It's the easiest way to move it. That doesn't necessarily mean it's the best way to do it.
Right.
And not even just trauma informed, but we're trying to teach anyone doing yoga is understanding their body and understanding how their body moves and how their body works. So when you move someone's arm for them to put it where it needs to be, they didn't move their arm where it was supposed to be. You need to have them move their arm to where it's supposed to be. It's the same way with bio parents. Like you can't do everything at the visits for them.
Right.
They have to do it. Yes. You have to let them do the thing to learn the thing. So having someone who's trauma informed and specific to the child welfare population is really important. And another example of this, say you have someone who's trauma informed but has experience like me as well working in the first responder military population.
Right.
We do yoga for first responders they call it a neurological reset. It's the words meditation that the public uses. That's one of their like coined terms is they do one that's called safe at home. So it's talking to a first responder while they're breathing and in a very calm state about imagine you're going home, your shift just ended and you're going home to be safe. Imagine how nice the house is. You wouldn't use that with a child in care.
Right.
You wouldn't use that with a bio parent
because
in care.
Their home is not.
You don't want them to imagine their home being like you're not going to tell them to imagine going home safe because what if they were physically abused?
And
what if
a lot of them don't even understand the concept of safe?
Exactly. Because they think where they were was safe because they're just with mom and dad or whoever their caregiver is. So that's important when working with someone who is not only just trauma informed, but trauma informed for the population they're working with.
Right.
That's why I think it's really important that someone creates something for the child welfare system, which is why I'm starting the child welfare yoga, because I'm making different styles and different practices for all the different populations. So the foster parents will have their own techniques. The bio parents will have their own techniques. The children will have techniques. The parents will have tactics to use with the children. Like everyone can have all of it.
Yeah. I love it.
You also, a big one that most people don't think of is you don't say, close your eyes. You can say, if you would like to close your eyes, you can. Yeah. If you're more comfortable with your eyes open, your eyes can stay open too. Because they've been through so much, like that, you're going to take their sight away. That's makes them feel vulnerable in a way that they might not be comfortable. And it could give them anxiety.
Yeah.
It could make them literally get triggered in the moment. Yeah. And also just giving people options to do different things is really important as well. If you go to a yoga studio, depending on the style, they could be like, this is the pose we're doing here. Yeah. Some people may not want to lie on the floor to do breathing techniques. Maybe they want to sit in the chair. Maybe, something bad happens, things of that nature. So just having those understandings is really important.
So Brenna, can you teach us something that we can use that you can somehow
translate through the microphone? Definitely. So I can teach, we'll just do belly breathing, which is the foundation of the 3-part breath, which you can get next time I'm on an episode.
Yes. And we'll just
So we're going to start with just belly breathing. Okay. So to do that, I'm going to have to fix the microphone so I can sit up straight because right now I'm reclined in a chair. Oh, nice and comfy. So everyone, if they're going to do this, they're going to sit up nice and straight wherever they are, or stand up nice and straight, or lay down nice and straight. Just make sure your spine is straight. If you are seated, plant your feet on the ground so that you have, your hip bones are in a nice spot. Spine's nice and straight. You're going to take the shoulders, roll them up, back, and then down. A lot of people pull them back, but the important part is actually pulling them down. Like you're trying to, for women, it's where your bra clip is. For guys, it's essentially where your scapula is at the bottom of your wing. That's where you want to pull your back to. Okay. Nice tall spine. Think about bringing your collarbones towards the ceiling, so lifting them up. And then we're taking our hands and we're grabbing our lower belly. So below the belly button, if you have a belt, that's great. You can leave it on because it's actually will help feel your belly breath a little bit more. And as I said before, we're breathing through the nose and out the nose. So as you inhale, you'll inhale through the nose and you'll push your belly out like you're filling up a big balloon.
When you breathe in, you fill up your balloon.
You're going to push your belly out. Yeah. So when you breathe in, you'll push your belly out like a big balloon. And then when you exhale and you breathe out, you're going to pull your belly back, like you're pulling your belly button towards your spine. And you're using your lower belly to push all of the air out and up through your nose.
Okay.
So hands on the belly. You're going to breathe in, push the belly out. So you'll feel your hands kind of separate a little bit. Nice big belly. Exhale. Belly comes back towards the spine. Now, one thing I want to touch on, I'm going to use you because I can see you doing this, and I'm sure a lot of people listening are doing it. Try not to raise your shoulders. So a lot of people breathe in their shoulders and their chest, and that's that stress response, that sympathetic nervous system. But that's how people have started to naturally breathe. Yeah. Which it's not natural. Stressed. It's exactly. Everyone's stressed out all the time. So think about trying to breathe slowly through your belly and pushing all of the air like you got a big, I was going to say beer belly. Yeah. So one more time, inhale, push through the belly. Exhale. Belly falls back towards the spine. And again, inhale through the belly. Exhale, belly falls back towards the spine. One more time. Inhale, push the belly. Exhale, back towards the spine. And by the way, shoulders are not moving anywhere. She is doing it right.
Yes.
So how'd that feel?
It feels good. It feels different.
It's different. And when people practice it, they actually... Some people who have been very big chest breathers their whole life, they actually say they feel their core getting sore because they're using muscles that they haven't used before.
Wow.
Yes. That's a whole other podcast of me talking about how none of us use our core the right way.
Oh my goodness.
But so that's called the belly breath. Yeah. What I recommend is it only takes 3 minutes a day to make an impact on your life. Okay. So everyone's challenge until my next episode is to do 3 minutes of belly breathing at least 4 times a week.
You're saying you can even do that when you're laying down, right? So you could literally be doing this when you first wake up, but you don't have to get out of bed yet. Those 5 minutes that you get sometimes after you wake up before you actually lift yourself out of the bed, that could be the time where you do that. And if you just do it 4 times a week, you're saying that's going to make an impact.
Well, I would say every day. Okay. But for my non-believers, I would challenge them to do it 4 times a week, only because there's just a saying, if you do something 4 times a week, you're doing it more in the week than you're not doing it. I would say if you want extra credit, every single day, 3 minutes.
Every day,
3 minutes. And it's literally a mindfulness practice. Right. Now, one thing I want you and everyone listening to think about, though, is to be mindful, you have to be aware in the moment and have intention behind what you're doing. So you can't have your hand on your belly and be washing the dishes and be feeding a child, be getting ready to leave the house.
Normal life, but probably the only time where you're not doing 8 things at once as a mom of, 6, 7, 8, whatever, is when I'm laying in bed right before I have to get up. So.
And the reason it's so important to have that practice is because yoga and breathwork practice and training is applicable to real life. So if you take the time to breathe for 3 minutes through your belly, the way you're supposed to, using your diaphragm, over time, when you're in those stressful situations doing 8 things at once, you're going to stop breathing through your chest and you're going to start breathing through your belly. And then you're going to start making more rational decisions. And then you're going to stop being impulsive. And then you're going to
be getting yourself in situations that stress you out.
And then you're going to be, a better mom, a better parent, a better wife, whatever it may be. So just taking those 3 minutes to breathe and put all of your focus on just breathing can literally change your whole life, like a ripple effect or a butterfly effect.
That's really cool. Brenna, thank you so much for joining me today. Yeah. Thank you so much for everything that you shared and the knowledge you imparted. We really appreciate you, and I'm so excited about your foster journey.
Thank you.
Come back soon.
I am so excited to come back.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Make sure you subscribe and follow us on social. We hope that you join us again next time and keep on fostering the future.